The guys we took over from, they had been shot at a little. Like, oh, we took, two shots. There'd been one IED in 7 months. It was cool. They were all happy, smiling. It was cool, rock and roll. But once we get over there, like all hell broke loose. It got so overwhelming at points that we all just kind of shut down emotionally. I think, not a joke, I think 70% of us came back to divorce papers. Like, we just stopped talking to everybody back home. Like, they were all dead to us. I remember this one guy that we had this little alcove where there was two phones we could use with our phone cards because people would send phone cards, like international phone cards.
Yeah.
And he's on the phone with his wife and he's just like sitting there and I can hear her because they're like 2 feet away and she's like talking about whatever shampoo she's using that day and how good it is, and he like took the phone and I watched him and he just started smashing it against the wall and then started crying, and then like I was like, yep, we're all doomed. Like, this is not going well. And so like I came home to divorce papers, like, because I there was a point like right after, I'd say the first one, but then especially after the second where I lost most of my team, I just went silent. I wasn't giving anyone back home anything. Like, hey, I'm alive. That's the most I could give. And it became very hyper focused on the team just right then, like surviving the moment. And it felt like everyone else back home was in a different world. Like, they're going about your daily routine, talking about work, talking about dating, and like, going to the bar and stuff. And they're like, we're in this other alternate universe where every day our trucks are being hit. Every day we woke up knowing one of us is probably not coming back today at the end of the day. And we didn't know who it was. And so it made this like weird, like, friction of realities where like we just disconnected 100%, just didn't care anymore. Like, everything, we just had to almost like forget that back home existed and become these feral little creatures of survival there. And what was actually more profound for me was when I got back, like the moment I got back, I got handed divorce papers. I was like, all right. And then I, 2 days later, left for jump school in Georgia. And so I had no decompress time. I had nothing. So it was this really weird juxtaposition of like where we were in our reality and then the home reality just kind of driving together at the same. It was surreal. Uh,
Yeah.
and that the gap between my two deployments was just this, like, I still was cold as hell. I still was like, I wasn't a human being yet. Uh, I didn't thaw until after I got out and I came to Pennsylvania. That's when I would say I actually like thawed out a bit, and it wasn't good. It didn't go well. You can wall it off for so long, but once it comes back, there's going to be some interest you owe, and it was just it was a hard transition back for I think a lot of guys.
Well, so I've written a number of things down just as you've been talking. Um, but let me just start where you just were. You said, that you were just using the word it, like it, shut it down. I forget exactly what phrase, but the it that has to be dealt with
Mm-hmm.
after you come home from that situation in Iraq. And I think you've touched on what that it is, but what is that it that needs to be dealt with when you get back from Iraq?
I think there's two different people that you have to be. I think the civilian that you were, has to be put away and put aside. There's this cold, unfeeling place that you have to get to where things like to just survive, to just be able to keep going and move forward, you almost have to become this like different version of yourself. Very cold, very unfeeling, very just frank and instinctual, I would say. Um, doesn't jive well in society. It's not that kind of person. It's it's something that you can watch death happen, you can kill someone with it, you can do a whole lot, but it's still a monster. It's still not a human being. Um, and so I think a lot of the problems, and I'm being very like, poetic about this. It's obviously not that big, but like I think a lot of guys have a hard time with the duality of that, where it's it's there when you need it, but it's really hard to shut off. Because like once you let it in, once it fills you, it's in you, and it's very hard. And I've had a lot of friends tell me when they got back, They had like young kids and stuff. They were very cold to their kids. They were very angry. Anything would set them off at a dime. Like it was, they were always on edge, on that tightrope of what's happening. Do I need to defend myself? Do I need to be somewhere? And they had a hard time relaxing after that. They had a hard time becoming a normal person again. So I always kind of visualized it as like a separate being, like for me, like that it was somebody else doing it, like that it was an alternate character inside me that I could let, I could let in, but I couldn't. It took a lot to force him out.
Hmm. Is part of what you're talking about related to the question if somebody asks you, what was that war about? What did that war mean to you? What was the purpose of that war? Is part of what you're getting at a difficulty in answering those questions? Like, what was that conflict about?
I think there was some part of that, like, because I think we were sold a rotten bill of goods. I don't think what we were told, defending democracy, weapons of mass destruction, you know, all this stuff. When we got there, we, our unit specifically, were fighting a different war. We were given the Zaidon operation unit. The Zaidon is this little like peninsula in the right below Fallujah. Historically, it is probably the most rough and tumble place in Iraq. They are the most fiercely tribal. Even Saddam Hussein's elite troops wouldn't go in there because they're so tribal. They're like, hey, we got this. Don't come in here. Because if you come in here, we're going to fucking kill you too. We don't care. Nobody gets in here. Not foreign fighters, not Americans. Everyone's going to die. Do you understand? And we were told this when we got there. And I remember that there was like, well, we're still coming in. And I was like, oh, Jesus, what is? And so the problem for us ended up being the people we were fighting were just fighting for their homes and their land. Like they didn't care. They put more terrorist heads on stakes than we killed. They were serious. Nobody come into our land. We will police our own. But that's not how the military works. It was our grid section. We had to go in, and unfortunately, there was terrorists, foreign fighters specifically, coming in from other countries who would hide there because they would have family or something. And they knew that more than any other place in Iraq, they could hide there and it was very hard to get to them because we had to fight our way through all of these militias to even get to them to start. We were trying to do raids and we never got a good raid because we could never get there on time because as soon as we hit the AO, we'd be getting IED'd, we'd be, and then all our mortars. And by the time we got to that house, 20 minutes later, they've all called, hey, they're on their way. He's left. And so it was very difficult for us because we felt like we were not fighting a war anymore. Like there was no end goal, right? If there's a flag and there's a country, hey, all we have to do is take the capital. We cut off the head of the snake. It's over. When you're fighting ideology, there is no end. There is no winning. There is actually just making more martyrs of these people who, oh, down with the West. And all of a sudden you kill them, in a firefight. And then it's like, oh, they've killed that guy. And then all of a sudden you've made more martyrs who then come in. And so we were just in this perpetual cycle for the first 7 months. And then whoever took over for us, I know their first few months were pretty bad too. Of For about a solid year in Iraq, it just became a war zone of a free for all where their tactics changed drastically. They went from the occasional pot shot, the occasional IED to I don't think one of the recon trucks left that compound and didn't get hit at least once a day. What now? Rarely, believe it or not, rarely did it kill anyone because it was mostly taking off tires and bumpers and like a lot of the IDs were not very good. But someone was always getting hit. A truck was always down, and now you're stopped in the middle of a road in enemy territory. The raid's probably not happening now because now you're stuck. So it was just a constant barrage that we never felt like there was like we never had a positive. Even the very few things we felt like we did, it didn't seem to affect anything, and it just We were just tasked with a new thing, and it was like, all right, well, now what? Like, that didn't do anything. That didn't make it better. So it was very hard to feel like you were fighting the good fight and at the same time be going through these all these big emotions and stuff because like it was very difficult to reconcile that there was good people there and half of them were still trying to kill you, you know, and like it was like so you're trying to be nice, you're trying to be cordial, and you're trying to be, you know, not make more insurgents, but at the same time you have to be everyone you look at, they're probably trying to kill you in some way. We were tasked with a cordon, where our whole unit, the entire company, um, was going to make a box around a area of land, and then we were going to have one element move through that area and basically just do a sweep, right? Hitting all the houses, getting all the people. And because we knew a few people were hiding there. So we're like, oh, if we just make sure no one can leave and we check every house, um, you know, by the end of the day, we will have checked at least and fingerprinted all of these people. Because at this point we were fingerprinting everyone. Everyone was going into a database with a camera. Like it was getting kind of high tech, and so we could make sure with, I would say, digital proof and some technology, like, okay, we have the right people. We don't, you know, it's not just hearsay anymore. As soon as we got on the ground, we realized, you know, they planned for desert, you know, they planned for wide open, and it is the jungle. You are sitting on the Euphrates River, and it is jungle. Palm trees, it's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful, mind-boggling beautiful. Palm trees and greenery everywhere. I mean, it is literally a slice of time from the cradle of civilization. Like you can see, you know, first man, you know, they're still doing the same farming practices we were 1,000 years ago. So it's this beautiful land, and all of a sudden you realize you can't see at all. You're in the jungle. And so our position was on the south, if you're looking at a map, a southwest corner, I think. Um, and we can't see any of the other units. We can't see the guys moving through the villages. We can't see anybody. And so now we're not creating an airtight, you know, box. Now it's just a sieve. And worse, the guys on the ground who are moving across are realizing it's all mud. I mean, like when they flood those fields, what is a hard pat? I mean, like cement when it dries. I mean, it is just the hardest material you've ever seen. Becomes the worst mud imaginable, about knee deep, impossible to walk through. And so they're trying to move across, and we're not even a quarter of the way done on the when we were supposed to be. And so they're like, "Hey, we're staying until this is done." Like, oh, okay. So what was supposed to be a couple hours, you know, 6 hours, I think at most, all of a sudden we're into the 12-hour, 13-hour range, and we're not prepared for this. But we've been sitting static in the middle of the worst place, in the middle of the worst town, in Iraq. Besides, I would say the major cities. I think the major cities were far worse for those guys. But as far as the outlying, we were in just insurgent Mecca, and they knew it. And so what ended up happening is during our 12 hours on station, we would rotate out guys, but they were coming, the indigenous were coming up and giving us food and playing soccer and trying to interact with us and stuff and really keeping our attention solely focused right there. You know, someone was always at the trucks. One of them was always hanging out with us, right? And we thought it was cute. We thought it was great. Hey, this is super nice. They're really nice to us. Uh, that night falls, which is terrible because now we can't see shit. I'm put up in the gun and the turret gun, which I'd never done before. That was not my usual. I was usually the driver. And so now I have to keep with my night vision goggles pretty much track of everything 180 degrees forward. So we start driving and we do a little bend. Like, I mean, I don't think we got 200 yards. And I turn around to see if the trucks are following, and our second truck was just destroyed. They had dug a hole, packed it with probably, we figure, about two 5-gallon drums of diesel fuel, and then packed the IED on top of it and then covered it up. So when the truck went over it, the trucks are flat bottom. So it channels all of the blast into the cab. Well, that wasn't the bad part. The blast actually probably wouldn't have killed many of them, if any of them. Uh, but the 10 gallons of diesel fuel definitely did its job. There was about an 80-foot tower of flame, about 20 feet across, and the truck did a complete flip in it. And it threw two of our guys out who were just on fire. I mean, just both of them died within a couple weeks of 80% burns, but it melted all their gear to them. I mean, they were unrecognizable, just running around on fire. Two of the guys never made it out of the truck. The fifth guy, uh, Elmo, the turret gunner got thrown like a catapult. The way the truck went, it threw him. He landed, he got up, and he went to try to go save his friend. Oh God. And he burnt the shit out of his hands and his arms trying to grab these guys out. And he was pulled away because there was nothing to save. They were gone. Like they were just burnt beyond recognition. And so that was our first like lesson that they're smiling, they're laughing, but they're keeping your attention, but don't think for a moment that they're not planning something. And because I mean, it wasn't like those people didn't know because like where we drove, that IED was directly in front of the houses they just came from. And so they were watching it happen. They were keeping our attention and making sure no one saw, like no one was going to drive forward or, you know. So that to us was eye-opening, you know, because you have infinite hope. You have all this hope that there's good people here. We're gonna do good for these people. We're gonna help them. And then they turn around and did something like that, and it just kind of that was it. Like then we're on our own. We'll do what we can for who we can, but they don't want us here. What are we doing here?
Right. I mean, that's the question that comes to my mind. We're told that you're there to do that country a big favor, but it seems like the people who live there aren't very interested in receiving this favor.
This is this is I think the biggest thing that was surprising to me in talking to the indigenous was they don't understand democracy. They don't want democracy. They don't care. Like the thing that it's hard for Americans to understand, and it was hard for me to understand, is when I say America, you are an American, I'm an American, and we all can rally around the American flag. It's something we'll fight and die for. They couldn't care less about Iraq. They didn't even understand the concept of a country of Iraq. They understood their immediate family, their extended family, I would say, and their tribe, clan, just about, two layers, three layers out, and that was it. After that, they could not give two shits. If it was happening a mile away, it wasn't happening to them. They didn't care. They had been through, one of the guys put it, we've been through 1,000 years of dictators and tyrants. Why do you think we would ever understand what you're talking about? Like, in 1,000 years, we've never known a time where we weren't just ruled over. It's part of us. So we don't care. We don't, if it doesn't affect our immediate surroundings, it doesn't, we try not to even like take part. So the Iraqi army is a strange function because you're asking a bunch of people who don't care about Iraq to then fight for the country of Iraq. And we realized very quickly they didn't care either, and they were there for a paycheck. The moment they took incoming fire, they've gone. Like they would quit, they'd drop their weapons, and they would leave because they weren't going to die for Iraq. They didn't understand that concept. They thought we were crazy. And so it was a very like, what are we doing here? We're not freeing them from anything. They don't care. They didn't, I mean, the Zaidon where we work, because Hussein left them alone, they're like, yeah, we didn't even notice he was in power. Like, we didn't care. I've been here 60 years and it didn't really make a difference in my life. Oh, okay. Like, all right.
Yeah, and then added to this frustration, I'm assuming, one of the things you mentioned, what you're right, is this transition from, there's some fighting back and forth to now we just have IEDs going off. And there's no one to fight back against. I mean, I guess you can go look for the people making the IEDs and all that, but in that moment the IED goes off, but there's no one to go after in that moment. Is that right? I mean, is this
Yeah, no, and that is in a guerrilla warfare setting, the worst thing that can happen to you is like an IED, some kind of ambush where there is nobody to fight after because you have all these emotions, these feelings. Like that night that we got hit, I was still in the front truck on the turret, so now we're sitting in basically, just protection area. And I remember just being so angry and hateful and just there's so many emotions that like I just wanted someone to take it out on. I wanted a fair firefight. I wanted to have somebody there that I could say, "Hey, you did this." And it never once in our entire in our entire deployment did we ever get a chance to fight back when we got hit with IEDs. Because most of them they would just lay with so there's command detonated, which is somebody guy with a trigger, but that was super rare because for that he had to be sitting there watching. And God bless you if you sit with a bunch of Marines 200 feet from you, pissed off, looking for a trigger because that's what we're looking for instantly, looking for a trigger man, looking for movement, looking for something. So most of them were uh, you would detonate them yourself. You would run over the trigger mechanism. And so it was one of those things that like it just became tiresome because it just became an occurrence that you just had to accept as like part of nature. It was like a lightning strike. You couldn't get there was no one to fight against. There was no one to get mad at. It just happened and you took your survivors and you moved on and you just kept trying to go over and over.
And you're experiencing this in service to a cause that is illusory.
Uh, yes, because at this point there's no goal. Like I said, World War One, World War Two, a lot of the like great wars, like, hey, if we just take, the capital, if we just take out this unit, we just take out this, well, we can end the war with these parameters where we were just kind of sitting there like it was just no matter what we did, it was just a sieve. We could catch a couple, but a lot more got through, or a lot more got made. And the atmosphere wasn't one of jubilation that we were like winning and we were taking land and hey, we've moved up the front. It was like, hey, we lost a couple more guys on the scoreboard and we didn't do anything. Like nothing's happening. We're not able to do what we were trained to do. Um, which is, we took great pride. My unit is probably one of the best units in the Marine Corps or the military. Uh, and we were not misused, but there was no use for us outside of I had a friend who was in the Navy SEALs, and he said right after my deployment, he went over, they were used the same way. That they were just giving us plot of land and it was like, hey, protect this. And he's like, this is not what we do. Like, this is not our skill set. Like, and so like it was a lot of waiting for something to happen and hoping you got to say something back, but it rarely did. We were lucky that we had such a good platoon sergeant that we started making some tactics that started being a little more proactive. But we were still, even with those tactics, we still had to take fire first. We still had to make sure they came to us and fired on us first for us to even get back. And so that just took a toll on you because you knew every day, like you we knew every day that one of us probably was coming back. And so, like in my truck, with my team, we said "I love you" every day before we left the wire, and it was like this sad, somber, like we'd bump knuckles and tell the guy next to you, "Hey, man, I love you, love you,
Yeah.
love you,"
Yeah.
because that was might be the last thing you said to them, and you did not. And we talked about we did not, we tried never to fight. We tried never to let emotions run high because I mean sometimes like you're given an order that you might not agree with, from someone in your team, and you're like, hey, but we tried to make sure because that could be the last thing you ever talked about. And it wasn't just like a remote chance, the off chance, like a lottery. There was a very good chance that's exactly what was going to happen.
Here's an interesting paradox because you tell me that when you're talking to loved ones back home, because of everything you're describing, you shut down. Um, the world they're in seems so foreign and you're not sharing anything. And then you're telling me that you've got Marines doing something that we don't normally think of Marines doing, which is
Hmm.
telling each other that they love each other. And so that tells me that something has happened not only to these guys, but among these guys. These guys are seeing one another in a very particular way that's got them, they're very tight. And they're one of the things that has them glued together is they're also, this is all my interpretation of what you're saying.
Okay.
One of the things that got these guys glued together is that they also understand that they're together in being cut off from the rest of the world in a way. That
Yeah.
they're
You-
just
You're sharing you're sharing the solitude with these guys. But these guys are also like you have friends in high school and you're like, "Oh, these are the best friends I'll ever have." Then you get to college. You're like, "Oh no, these are the best friends I'll ever have." And then you kind of like you go through your life and you're like as you get through life, but then you realize the people that you you really truly appreciate and love are the people who you go through the worst with. The people who you actually trust to be by your side when the worst possible outcomes are happening. And so what ends up happening for with my unit is we were all from various backgrounds. Like it was one was from Louisiana, one was from the Bronx, one was I was from the mountains of New Hampshire. Like and so one was from Ohio. So we're all from one was from Erie, Pennsylvania, but none of us have remotely the same backgrounds. You know, we're not, you know, socioeconomic, parent, whatever. And so we're all very desperate in our backgrounds, but all of a sudden as we got there, you just become this like well-oiled machine of who can you know you can trust them. You know without saying a word they're going to be doing what the thing that they need to be doing for you and you'll do the same. Because if they don't, you're both going to die. And so and this is also this doesn't just happen. We practiced for almost a year before we went over together. And so we were 90% of my life for a year was spent with these guys. Like we slept together, we ate together, we shit together. Like there was no privacy. There was no, you know, you're out in the woods like you are so close that you just have that unspoken like, "Hey man, and he's already doing it. You know, you don't even have to ask. People get tighter with their unit and their guys they're with than I think any other person they've ever been with because you're sharing something that no other friendship does. You don't die with your friends very often, or there's not that real remote chance, or what, you know, like, and so you can have friends that you're like, oh, he's nice, but I wouldn't trust him with my life. Whereas in the military, that is all there is. He might not even be the most fun guy, but do you trust him with your life? And so a lot of things that like you might not be hanging out with him outside for a beer if you guys were in the civilian world, but you're definitely laughing together and having a good time, knowing that he's proficient and he's going to have your back. And so you do develop these relationships of I would have died for them and they would have died for me.